Hey, what's up, guys? Today it's Mir, and I'm joined by VesperArcade and
Yo,
Sonic
what
Soul.
up?
What up?
And today, I guess we have another discussion video for you guys. And uh,
What
t-
the heck are we
today,
talking about today?
today's topic is interesting in the sense that it's a very broad topic, and it is just learning in fighting games specifically, but learning in a broader term in video games. And
Oh
if we
no.
wanna approach it in a different way, then it would be how can you help other people learn your game or learn, a fighting game in our specific case.
You can't end the video.
So, well, I see that you have a very interesting perspective that we
Oh,
will
I
debate
do.
about.
Oh, of course I do. I've been trying to teach it for the past 10 years now.
Well, since
But I
we're
mean, Mir, we talked about this before. We talked about more on the developer side of things, right? So I guess we're
yeah,
talking more on the player side of things now, right?
yes, exactly.
So this will be interesting to talk.
More specifically, I would say as someone that already knows fighting games, how to help someone that is trying to get into fighting games, right? Because that's
Right.
the ultimate question. We always like I bet that if you've been playing fighting games for like some time, you found yourself in a situation where you had that one friend that showed interest in fighting games, and then you tried to teach him, and then they just ditched.
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's why.
definitely. So
That's
is that the first question that we're starting off with here?
Yeah, I would say that the first question, the first topic of the day, if you will, is how can we help other people get into fighting games? Like, how can we teach them in a way that is,
Right,
conducive to
right.
them learning?
for me. First of all, since I know you guys were talking about it, it is definitely easier to get someone into a fighting game as opposed to actually teaching them how to play a fighting game. Because the thing is, for me at least, from what I do with replay analysis, and even beforehand when I was talking with a couple of my friends and trying to get them in the fighting games, it's not that people people can immediately get into a fighting game. I think when you have somebody that is enjoying the game, right, and for it on face value, and they're like, yo, I see you're doing all these combos and whatnot, how do I do that? Like something as simple as that, right? Like
Hmm?
I think it's easy to teach somebody something simple like a combo, or like something fundamental, right? Like something like using this poke or what have you. It gets more daunting when you get into the nuanced part of fighting games where it's about it's actually about like the strategy, tactfully doing things, like using tactics to essentially like play the game as well too, like playing the mind game, the 50/50s, the frame data, all that
Yeah.
stuff starts to get more daunting for a player as you progress within the learning process. And I've noticed even with doing replay analysis on my end, when I do replay analysis for a variety of games, for Street Fighter, for Grand Blue, for Sam Show, it's all the same. It's all either, well, I don't really understand the idea of like hit confirming and buffering my normals within the neutral, and why is it that, you know, even when I do this, I still have to worry about the other factors that my opponent's going to do within the neutral. And what about pressure? You're telling me to do all these different block strings and whatnot. I don't understand why exactly these work. Oh, frame data? You're telling me that it's supposed to be, and math? Math? I
Right.
need math? And then
Yeah.
that's when it starts to get complicated for a lot of individuals trying to enter fighting games in a much more intermediate level, right? Because
Hmm.
that's really it's really based alongside the level of progression in terms of skill.
Yeah.
So that's really where the difference is. That's where the difference in trying to get someone into a fighting game as opposed to trying to really get someone in like competitive and invested in a fighting game. That's the
Yeah.
difference.
That's a good point, Sonic. And like I said, it's not only just like overwhelming; it's also intimidating and frankly not fun for a lot of players as well to want to to have to learn some of that to kind of
Yeah, yeah.
break that competitive echelon, bro.
It's I totally agree. It's exactly like I think learning an instrument also is very like similar in a sense. Like for me with the drums, you have to learn how to separate all of your limbs. And by the time you're trying to do all these crazy beats, like you're trying to do the 90s beat, and then it's like, okay, I got that down, but like, you gotta do it with the bass and the kick pedal and everything, with the
Yeah.
hi-hat and all of that. But most people want to do that stuff, but don't do the paradiddles, right? The
Yeah.
paradiddles to actually do it. Like they don't want to
Right.
learn how to actually manipulate their limbs separately. And that
Hmm.
is the exact like example I feel. when trying to learn
Especially if I
something.
like bust out my axe guitar and I'm like, "Yo, all right, you want to battle, bro?" You know what I mean? Because it's not just
Exactly.
learning an instrument; you're still also playing somebody. So that means you have to be someone capable of dealing with loss,
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
that's
And
a
that
big thing.
is also very difficult in fighting games because you don't gain anything from losing, pretty much, except
Mhm.
for learning, of course. But no one cares about that. So it's you know what I mean. It's going to be not fun. So okay, let me
I mean,
backtrack for a bit here, but one thing too, like you made a good point, Song, is that it's not hard to get people into fighting games, just teaching them. So we
Yep.
have games like Street Fighter V sold a few million copies, right? So a few
Hmm.
million people playing it. Mortal Kombat, many million players play it, and we have like DBZ. I think it was like 5 million copies. I don't know what the MK11 copies is, but it's huge.
Yeah.
Anyways,
mhm.
because it was one of the top selling games
Yeah.
of 2019. So we have all these players, and then if you even see it on like on the Steam graph or whatever, like after the first week, after everyone beats the single player campaign or whatever, it takes a giant nosedive
Yep.
in the player amount because not too many players play it online. They're playing it for the story or whatever, right?
Yes.
And then you lose these players. So I think the first answer to the question, and this is the developer side, is that you make the game as fun as possible, that
Mhm.
you don't have to learn the game to have fun with it, I guess is the best way to put it. You don't have to compete to have fun with it. There's many things you can do. You can learn at whatever pace you want, whether you want to learn or not, but you don't have to learn it to make it fun. But like with Street Fighter 5, after you beat the arcade mode and the story mode, right, the game is no longer fun if you no longer want to learn. Like there's nothing else to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's the difference between the journey and just playing the play, right? Like
Mhm.
Right.
actually going to take the journey is a big step for a lot of players that some people don't even comprehend. They don't even understand it immediately. They only want to most people or most people that end up seeing a fighting game for the first time and just wanting to get into it like as a casual, they want to just, play a cool character, do the coolest thing possible. I saw this little girl in an orange hoodie just do a dolphin kick or whatever. I want to have her call her dolphin and just beat the crap out of this person. And then that's
Mhm.
what they want to do. And then on the side, you might have a story mode that's engaging or
Right.
an extra side mode as well that they're gonna enjoy. Like, you have the bonus stages in Street Fighter in the initial games, like 4 and even before that with the pairing with Sean's basketball, all that stuff was fun things. Even though they were small things to do, those are still things that like, oh man, this is mad cool. I didn't know Sean used the basketball and things like that. Casuals like that stuff a lot. Like
Mhm.
that's the stuff that's gonna bring them back in and let them want to play more. Just the idea of having those fun little like side modes or those fun little modes that they can play. But then I feel as though if you're trying to get these people to also stay within the game and potentially learn fighting games on that deeper level, how about you have those fun modes also kind of teach something about the game? That's why I like the bonus stages too with at least Street Fighter 3 because it at least introduced you to the idea of parrying.
Yeah,
So
Mhm.
that
exactly.
that
Yeah.
that's what I think casual modes should do. They should have a little hint of teaching casual players like, okay, this is a mechanic in the game. This is how it is. This is how it's fun for this. And we can go and talk about tutorials as well in the same vein with Guilty Gear as well. Because
Mhm.
Guilty Gear, they have a whole platformer
Yeah.
that you could do to learn
Yeah,
the
it's
game.
it's
So
basically not a fighting game. Like you're
yep.
learning the game, but not through the fighting game aspect. You're learning it through something else that everyone can find enjoyable. And I do agree on that. But this is fine and all on the developer side of things. But one thing that I feel like is very important here is that a lot of people that get into fighting games or any game in general, actually, but fighting games specifically, just because they're, well, let's say more cryptic, if we will,
Hmm.
is that they don't know ways to learn, right? Like they have no idea, like as you were saying before, they have no idea how to approach the concept of learning, and so they automatically find the most unfun ways to try and improve, right? And so it's an automatic um turn off. Like they just don't want to play, right? Because like if I have to practice this combo in the lab for a billion years, that's not going to be fun,
Well,
and so they immediately stop.
I think that's also kind of like a stigma with fighting games as well, right? Like in terms of people saying, "Well, I need to be in the lab for hours and hours to learn this particular thing." That's not necessarily the case sometimes too, right? If you have a combo that you have to grind, sure, you're gonna need to go into training mode so you can build the muscle memory, so you're not getting beat the crap out of every 3 seconds when trying to execute this combo. And it also
Mm-hmm.
depends on what combo you're trying to do as well. Sometimes you just need something basic to get you started, so that way you can actually learn the other things, because it's all about clearing the mental stack at the end of the day, so you can clear up that clutter within your brain, so you can actually focus on your opponent and the match. Of course,
Yeah.
you have to work on that, but it's like you could learn a majority of these things by playing the game online with another person, which of course, given some fighting games and their delay base, I understand this. But in the games that do have good connections online, that's you guys are fortunate to have good online. And Street Fighter 5 has good rollback too. For what it is now, it has better rollback than it did before. But like you can use online, play in matches, and figure out some of the basic things that you need to do. Learn how to anti-air, learn what your basic poke is, learn what a hit confirm is, right? You can learn the fundamentals by
But
playing the game as well.
I feel like here we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves in the sense that, like, this is nice and all for us that know how fighting games kind of work, like, and there's some overarching concept that, of course, extend to all fighting games, like, playing footsies, playing neutral, like, what is with punishing, all these kind of things, right?
Mhm.
Anti-airing. But for someone that is completely new, I can understand this being very difficult to grasp as a concept. And that's why they look at it as something that is not fun, right? And that's why they look for something that is just something that they can play and enjoy themselves, but not necessarily because they want to learn. It's just because, they want to have a good time. So this is, I feel like, the stigma you were talking about. There's something that you can practice, like still in the sense of actual, training mode, but not
Yeah.
that is not unfun, especially if you have access, like you said, to another person. Imagine, I mean, I hope I had hoped the Street Fighter 5 would get online training mode at some point. It hasn't, but
Yeah.
games that have online training mode or offline training mode, if like, well, I mean, I guess the situation right now is kind of whatever, but when you could have, an offline partner to train with, there's so many things that are not necessarily, just grinding out a combo that can be fun to practice. Like, for example, the spacing and understanding the concepts of neutral, or like we're saying, anti-airing, like even understanding the concept of pressure, right? Like how to defend. All these kind of things, they can be approached in a way that is not just, rote memorization where you're just practicing that combo over and over until you're good at it, right? It's an interactive kind of learning. And this is
Yeah.
what I feel like is fun, because the interactivity brings a new element to the table. It makes it different, and it makes it so that you don't
But
feel like left behind, right? Because there's always someone else that you can interact with.
But
And
you see there, Mir, you do mention about, like, practicing with another player in general, be it online
yeah.
training mode or offline training mode. That's why I said that you can also do it by just playing the game normally online as well. But then this
Hmm.
also goes into what Vesper was talking about. People just don't like to lose.
Yeah.
That's why. People don't like to lose. Period. I don't care who you are, all right? It doesn't matter. We all innately don't want to lose, right? It's
Hmm.
gonna be there. And you have to learn to lose when it comes to
And it's a
fighting games.
1v1 game.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's not a team-based game. It's not Apex.
And
And blame.
I'm not saying it's like, oh, you need someone to blame on your team, but it's like the feeling of losing in a 1v1 is way more devastating than if you had a team, because there's so many factors to keep in mind, right?
Yes.
Exactly. And it's like, in terms of, I understand that training mode will alleviate this, right? But what about people that do not have, unfortunately, a training partner? Most people entering these games that are newcomers aren't even thinking to that level of having a training partner. They just want to get into the game and see what it's all about. And
Hmm.
then the next step is for them to be able to see, well, how can I do these? How am I able to do the things that this guy is doing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And most people that don't have this training partner, or don't have this luxury, right, of I mean, I wouldn't even say, I don't want to say it like that, because I know everybody's got like friends and stuff too. But like, I think that people that don't have the social,
Hmm.
aspect of it, or like the fact that they don't have like a good online or whatever the case may be, their only way is to play through matches sometimes, and that's usually when a lot of people fall off,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah, of course.
because they want to do the cool things, they want to have fun, as you say. But to get to that next level, you can have fun in that next level too.
Mm-hmm.
but it's the losing that's a part of it as well, right? It's the losing that
Can
people
I give
don't
another
want.
example, maybe before you
Yeah,
chime in
yeah.
here?
Go ahead. For
Sure,
sure.
sure, sure.
Thanks. Like I want to use StarCraft as an example because StarCraft
Mm-hmm.
is a hardcore 1v1 game as well. I mean, it has team fighting, team battles, but it can be a hardcore 1v1. It's one of the most like overwhelming games RTS for me. Like I get so mentally exhausted just playing one match of it. But even in a game like StarCraft 1, even if you don't want to play people 1v1, there's team fighting, but there's also calm stomping. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with this, where people would get together and it'd be like 7 versus 1 calm stomp on BGH. And they would play that all night. And it's
Uh-huh.
just fun. And you
Yeah.
can learn your own builds, or people would spend most of the time spending money on turrets for some reason, so no one comes to their base. But you know what I mean? It's something else to do, and people just enjoy that. And it's just
Yeah,
like I
because
said,
it's that social aspect we were talking about, right? And
right,
that's what I was. Maybe I was thinking too much from the social perspective because I began the entire discussion by saying, we have that one friend that tried to get into fighting game
Yeah,
and into
yeah,
fighting games, and then kind of like left, right? And I was thinking
yeah,
about that specifically. It's that in that situation where you have someone that has shown some willingness to learn, how can we maintain that drive basically to improve, right?
mhm,
Because it's really easy to get demoralized with fighting games, as we said, especially, right? Like, you want to learn, you want to go online, but you're not quite sure how to learn, and then you start losing over and over, and you don't know what to do. And yeah, like I can understand why that is not fun, first of all, and that
right.
why that could be demoralizing. So, like,
Well, sorry,
go
keep going.
ahead. Oh, no, no, okay. Well, I mean, I was just about to say the social aspect of it in this case is trying to find these fun ways of learning together in a
Yeah,
way
together.
where basically you're compensating for the shortcomings of the game, right? Because the game should have, team battle mode or RPG mode, kind of like Granblue, where you can play with your buddy and kind of like getting
yeah. It's a beat
used
'em
to
up.
how the game works. Yeah, that's beat 'em up, right? So, like if the game doesn't have that, you have to compensate for it artificially, right? Of course, because you want to keep them entertained some way.
Right.
So I feel like that social aspect is definitely one of the best ways to maintain this
Of
drive
course.
to learn.
Right. And Mortal Kombat, as much as we use it as a great example of casual play and enjoying the game, it's still not bringing more people into competition, because that's what
Yep.
we're really talking about, is
Yep.
teaching players to get into competition
Yep.
in fighting
Yes.
games, right?
Hmm.
So even though Mortal Kombat has that casual part, it's still it's how do we get people to transition, and it's very complicated, it's very difficult, and there's a lot on the developer side of things they can do, Mir, like we talked about before, with the landing page and
Hmm.
instant gratification, where you're rewarding the player for losing, where they're progressing costumes or colors or content with the game, so they're not just worried about winning all the time to actually gain something, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is definitely complicated, and I think about that all the time for fighting games in general. But yeah, another thing too is you know a lot of casuals and stuff like to spectate high level play, even if they
Yep.
don't
Hmm.
fully understand it. And we have tournaments and commentators. We have these quick headlines trying to give some tips on the bottom of the screen in between ads. We have the commentators trying to describe the match in the
And
plainest
and
detail
even now
possible.
and even
Yeah,
now with online tournaments happening because this they're the new normal, you're getting all these, Diego Umejares is 3-time Evo champion chat
right.
monsters coming in and wanting to play too. So
Right, and
Hmm.
so when you have these casual players, watching these tournaments, it either makes them like, "Oh, look at all the money involved. I would love to compete," or "Look at the hype. I wanna get involved with that," or, "Man, look at this tournament. It's all these people that love and enjoy the same hobby I do. I would love to fly down there and enjoy it with them and be
yep.
there."
Yeah.
And all these the tournament scene is very important too. Even though it's the competition, it's something that still the casuals watch. We have thousands of viewers watching these tournaments. Obviously, they don't all play. I'm sure.
Mhm.
I'm sure actually a small percentage actually play, but it's
Oh
still
yeah.
fun to watch, and I think that's just as important.
I mean, yeah, like one of the important points that you brought up here is that there's this I mean, basic concept of human empathy, right? Like if you are basically watching a tournament, right, and you see someone that is playing at the top level of play, what you see is a person that has gone through this training process and has grinded the game out and it's become, a good player, right? And so you kind of see it as, oh, this is what I should do, right? Like this is what I can become if I dedicate myself to the game, right? So like there's always that thought in the back of your head of I can be just as good as these guys if I dedicate myself to learning, right? So
Of
that's the
course.
driving force, basically. You want to be the very best, like no one ever was, or whatever. Right? But that's kind of the idea, right? Like you do want to become better because it will bring you, it could be anything. It could be money, it could be fame, it could be just the satisfaction of becoming a better player, right? But
Becoming the strongest.
that's where I feel like the next point comes in, and is that the learning, regardless of how much you can try to make it fun, sometimes it's just not. Like you just have to accept that sometimes when you have to learn, you have to do stuff that is honestly boring, but it's necessary.
The
And
boring stuff is always necessary when trying to actually like clear up all that clutter in your head, because
yeah,
the last thing you want to do is go into a match still, and a lot of the times people want to leave. And again, Vesper, that article you sent me a long time ago really opened my eyes on a lot of this, and it's helping me with a lot of other players. It's always going to come down to the mental stack. That's always where it's going to come down to. It's going to come
hmm
down to how much you practice, how much you've ingrained in your hands the things you need to know, so that way the only thing you have to focus on at the end of the day is how to play your against your opponent and break them down, right? How to figure out how they act, how they move, and counteract what they're doing. That is, to me at least, where the fun of fighting games really kick in competitively, because once you remove the whole he jumped in at me, what button should I press here? Well, how do I do this? No, stupid. You can't just do spinning bird kick. That's stupid. Why would I do that? Okay, let me try to do how about standing medium? That's a poke. That's not an anti-air. What am I doing? I don't know how to anti-air him. Oh my god, help,
in
help.
the meantime, you got jumped in on 3 times.
Exactly, and you just finished losing like 40% of your life. People
hmm
people don't like that. People don't like that jarring feeling in their head of working their brain around to try and get their hands to match these buttons and stuff. It's as simple as a good example of this is obviously also with like other games with quick time events, or like with Dragon Ball Z, Budokai 3 or whatever, where you have to do these inputs for the fusion, and you're like, I don't even remember how to do the inputs for the fusion on this pad because I don't even know where the buttons are. Like it's things like that are very important, like for the mental stack, because if you can clear up all that clutter, the only thing you have to worry about is reacting to your opponent, dealing with what they're doing, and playing the mind games with them. And it's so hard to get to that point, I feel, for a lot of people, because you have to teach them from the ground up, like, okay, these are the things you have to do in practice, and that stuff is mundane, right? That stuff
hmm
to some people may feel mundane. And
Yeah,
so,
that's
you
something
know
that I like to like bang about quite a lot. Is the classic is watching replays, right? If you tell to
yeah.
someone, "Oh, you should watch your replays," the reply goes from something like a straight up lie, as in, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna watch my replays," and then they're not gonna do it,
I
or
watch replays all the time.
or like to straight up moaning is like in pain and suffering. Because admittedly, watching replays, even though like the amount of information you can get from it is like so crucial to your learning experience, people don't want to do it because I mean, admittedly, it's boring sometimes, right?
Well, no, 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 no. I don't even think it's boring. I
I
don't even
mean,
think it has anything to do with. I
You're
think
crazy.
I I think
You're
well,
fucking crazy, bro.
I do it for other people. I do the work for other people essentially with replay analysis for Grand Blue and other games. I don't find that boring at all, but I
yeah,
guess
but
I may be weird.
no,
But the point
the
of
reason why you find it interesting, Sonic, and this is like goes back to the point we were making before, is that you're not looking at your own mistakes. So because you're not looking at your own mistakes, it doesn't feel bad,
but
right?
the
But
but,
that's
but
that's
the
the that's
thing,
the problem about like learning
that's
from
it right
replays.
there. But that's it right there. That's it right there. It's not about it being boring, all right? It's not about that. It's about the fact of loss, which is what we've talked about. It's the fact
hmm
that you just finished playing a match, you got beat the crap up crap out of, the game is like, you lose. And then you're like, okay, great, I lost. I'm supposed to now go back and watch a replay where I saw my persona getting kicked out of multiple times, getting beat the crap out of multiple times. People don't like that. They don't want to see the fact that they got to relive the moment where they lost again and have to actually like practice, okay, well, this is what I did wrong. This is what I did wrong here. This is what I did wrong here. I did some things right here, which is good. You want to tell people, okay, you did something right here, but they ultimately have to face themselves. Fighting games are an introspection into yourself as a person. No matter how many ways you slice it, people may think it's otherwise. It might be otherwise, but Seth Killian also said it best too, that these games are also like, you could see how people think, you can see how people act, you see their personalities within their play style. And so it's like looking at yourself in the game, more or less. And I don't think people may realize that, but it's a fact subconsciously. So when you have to look in your replays and see yourself getting bodied like that, it's like, well, it's demoralizing for some people, but you have to face yourself in order to grow. You have to be willing to look at yourself and saying, yeah, I did this wrong. How can I improve? If you can't tell yourself that this is the wrong thing that you did here, then you're not going to be able to face these situations moving forward. And a lot of people, they don't want to do that. It's always, at the end of the day, it comes down to if you can take the L.
But again, it's not just about taking the L, as I was saying. I feel like, I mean, I don't want to sound like I've ascended to nirvana or whatever, but I got into a point where I realized that it's necessary, say, if I want to improve, to watch my own replays, and I have to grind out these combos and stuff. So, like, I accept it. I personally don't find it, like, oh, it's the trouble of loss, right? Like, going back and looking at my losses problematic for me. No, that's not the problem. But at the same time, I know that it's necessary, and so I do it because I've learned at this point that it helps me way more than if I didn't do it, right? But it's still like I still don't think it's like all that enjoyable, to be honest, because I will look at a replay, and as much as I try to make it interesting, like I make it, I write down notes, or I try to make it look as schematic as possible so that I spend the least amount of time on it, and I can go back to actually practicing these things in a real match and all of that. Like, I still have to go and do it, which is part of the problem. Like, it's not interactive, right? And that's why, again, the social aspect comes back in, because if you're watching replays with a friend, like, that helps ton already. And it's, like, you do it for your stream, and that's basically the same thing, right? You have someone else to watch your replays for you, and you can offer insight that you might not have thought of. That shortens the exactly. That shortens the amount of time that you need to dedicate on that replay specifically, because maybe they have some idea that you didn't have, and that simplifies your training process, right? But at the end of the day, like, to go back to the original concept, I feel like there are some things that are not fun and that you have to do, and people, I don't want to say that they don't want to accept that, but I can understand why, they would get not demoralized, but discouraged by the fact that there's stuff that is not fun. But the problem is that people want to get better, but they don't want to do the boring stuff. So we come at an impasse where maybe you become, like, you get past that rookie level where you just approach fighting games and you now know the basics, but then you have to go to the intermediate level and to get or past the intermediate level, and to get there you have to do all these boring things, and people just stop there. So that's the problem that concerns me the most. Like, how do you fix that, if that's even possible? Like, do you guys have any insight on this?
Because another thing too is the fact that a lot of times when I tell people to watch, I don't want to beat this with a dead horse, because we're talking about this replay stuff a lot, but people don't even know what they're looking for when they're watching the replay.
Yeah.
Like, if you tell someone, hey, watch your own replay, they're like, okay, I'm willing to do this, but what the hell am I looking for if I don't know how to play the game in the first place? I'm just watching my ass get kicked. That's what I'm asking you. How do I stop my ass from getting kicked? Yeah. So, like I said, the main thing we're trying to talk about is how to get to that intermediate part, and that's a huge leap from the beginner to the intermediate. And I honestly think this is more so on the dev side that they have to do. They have to find a way to, like, add content or give a type of content where the player is being challenged with more scenarios that can also be fun, that also doesn't have to necessarily put them in the hot seat. So one way like to bridge the gap is kind of like team battles is kind of one thing, because it's like half-assed competition where you're still playing with your friends, you're still having fun playing other people, but it's not all 1v1 by yourself. Another thing
Mhm.
is like the boss battle challenges. No, don't make the stupid like Shadow Lady shit where she's doing like 50,000 combos on you, but not that stuff. But like I kind of like these weekly battles, just kind of like the challenge towers in Mortal Kombat, where you're getting a little bit harder content where the player is forced to learn new strategies to overcome it, right?
Mhm.
And once again, not put in the hot seat. And yeah, like just constantly adding more guides and
I
just more stuff that
well,
happens to just push them.
I
Because once again, like you know what I mean? Like if you look at games these days, like most games are it's like there's a huge online multiplayer aspect, but like you guys said, it's a social thing too. And with fighting games, it's just so hardcore with the 1v1. So it's just tough to kind of go to that transition, because a lot of people have anxiety too, because they're put in a scenario that makes them feel really uncomfortable. There's a lot of
Mhm.
players that even literally remove the names and ranks of the players that they play against just so they
That's
don't have
true.
that anxiety.
Yeah.
Like even with Red Gambit, who have been coaching recently, right? Even he prefers to play casual matches when he warms up and stuff. Like there's players like me, me and Song more hardcore. We don't care. We'll play whatever because we need that drive, because that's just what we're growing up to. But there are some players that's just it's really hard, and it's completely understandable too.
Mhm.
So I think that's the dev side, man, that really can help out with that. And it's just
I
the type of content has to be progressive as well.
I do agree with the dev side in terms of like making things a little bit more accessible with like team based aspect things, like making things not as super competitive out the gate. The online training mode Mir mentions is that's something that's I think is still crucial. Like regardless, I know that I said before in my previous point that the only real, not the only real way, but like one of the only ways that some people may have is only just playing through online. But online training mode is a good factor for that. The team based part of it, Grand Blue actually has something. Something. It may not be like it may be a little archaic, or it may be a little bit basic. Like it only tells you like, hey, you can do the easy input of this special move. Hey, do you know how to dodge? Do you know how to properly, it teaches you the mechanics of the game through RPG mode, and you could do it with a friend. You could do it
Mhm.
co-op, online or offline. And that team-based thing is not there in any other fighting. It's similar to like dynamic battle in the Street Fighter Alpha 3 series, or the Street Fighter Alpha in Street Fighter Alpha 3. Yeah. Like you had a dynamic battle as well. Granted, it didn't teach you anything. It was just, oh, Ryu and Ken versus Bison. But the idea is that you could have that type of implementation in every fighting game, where you have like a 2v1 or whatever, where it's like, okay, you see this guy, he's doing this combo. It's like a beat 'em up. It's like Streets of Rage, where you want to learn the infinite like block stun nonsense, or stun lock nonsense, and you see your friend doing it, and you're like, oh, I want to do it too, which is what I talked about in the beginning of this video as well. I see my friend just did it, I want to do it too. And the game is also telling me, hey, do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do that? It's showing you, at least on the side, how to do these things as well. So that way you're like, okay, I understand these concepts. On an intermediate level, however, again, I think that's gonna be hard in general. I think that's still gonna be pretty hard.
Yeah, and this
Um
is really dependent on the game too, of course, because there are some games that are not very execution heavy, and that really helps people get past this hurdle of practicing the boring stuff, if we want to use this term, right? Like a classic would be, well, you look up some combo guide maybe, right? Because you want to become a better player, and then there's some really difficult combo in there that you'd really want to do, but it just takes so much practice to get used to, right? Especially to do it in a match, that you have to spend like an ungodly amount of time for someone that is not used to it in training mode,
yeah.
just grinding that combo, right? That can be, I mean, demoralizing. I mentioned it in a previous video of ours, but I've been practicing a little bit of Darkstalkers, just
Yeah,
out
Visa.
of curiosity. And unfortunately, I picked a character that is quite technical with the combos, and I swear I must have practiced the same combo for like 15 hours, and I still cannot do it. I mean, I can do it sometimes, so I'm become better at it, and I'm glad that I can see the improvement, right? And this is what helps me go forward as a player, because I'm the kind of person that really, feels that sense of achievement of if I can finally do it, or at least I can finally do it better than before, really helps me go forward. But I can understand that other people that especially don't have this kind of mentality can just find it just boring and they want to quit and do something else that is fun, right? So having games that can give you that entry level where you can do the cool stuff relatively early. I mean, maybe at a disadvantage, like Grand Blue is a good example because you have easy specials and easy supers and stuff, right? And you can do the cool combo. But
Well, it's not
you're in
even just
current.
it's not even just a cool combo. In Grand Blue, it's easy input for the specials, which means that for things that have like a lot of time, like to do a DP motion to react to a jump in, right? That takes a little bit of you gotta at least do the motion first. If you're doing an easy input motion, which is literally just forward and the button, it's not like you don't even have to think about doing them. It's literally just I just see the jump in. I'm gonna press this button
Yeah,
for
no, exactly. So like
and that's to me like I understand in the in the aspects of that game, it makes sense, but in other games, it might be too daunting. But that's a topic of more accessibility, and we've talked about that
Well,
already.
that's important too, Sonic, is that out of all we're laying down all these issues, right, with fighting games and competition, but none of us has once suggested, hey, we need to make these games more accessible. We have not mentioned that once. We haven't said, no, we need one button specials. We're not mentioning that because that does not solve the problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
I totally agree with that. Like
One
for
button specials is not going to remove frame data. It's not going to remove fighting
nope,
game
yeah,
nuances.
nope,
I feel
and
It's
that's
not
like
the
going to
thing.
do
at
That's
least
the
as
thing. Like
far. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, that's the thing, right? Like, you don't want to neuter the game so much where you end up losing the game's identity or you end up like completely changing or completely removing some values of expression in the game, right? I want to make it very clear that you can still have a game that can get newer players into it while also keeping all of the little nuances and modes of expressions for higher level play because that's the point. You want to do all the cool stuff and be different from all your friends, right? So
Yeah.
right. I mean, like Smash Brothers, for example, has one button specials, right? But the game is like the competition is like made by the community. It's not even remotely like
well,
designed like from the developers to have
yeah,
competition
they
for it.
thought it was a party game, and
Yeah,
to be honest,
yeah,
With
yeah,
melee,
exactly. Like
with
the
melee,
community makes it into a
with
competitive, and they because of that they have to make certain rules to the game, play certain stages, remove the
new
items, that kind
items.
of, right? So like there's a lot that goes into that too, without removing too much to make it accessible and all that.
Yep.
Mhm. I mean, briefly touching this concept of accessibility, I would like to bring this up again. One way of doing combos that I personally enjoy very much, and I think it's actually very conducive to learning as well, is the way it works in Marvel vs. Capcom game
Mm,
because of the hit stun deterioration, right? So the combo becomes progressively harder as it goes.
yes.
So what you can do is you can learn a very basic combo that works and it's easy to do. But then when you're in training mode, you can practice extensions to this combo, right? You can make it longer and longer by adding things to it. And what this
Hmm.
does is that since it becomes harder as it goes, you're probably going to drop it towards the end rather than the beginning. So what this does is that you're trying to do the hard combo, which is what you think is fun, right? Like that's where you get your satisfaction. It's like, oh, I finally did the cool combo. But at the same time, you're always practicing that beginning part of the combo too. So you're getting down the muscle memory for what is like boring in a sense, right? Like that's your
That
basic
all you have to
undroppable
focus
combo.
on.
Yeah, like
All
that's
you have to
your
focus on is the hard part.
yeah, exactly. Like, this is the basic undroppable combo that you will actually use in your matches, right? But you're
Yep.
practicing the hard combo, which is the cool stuff that you want
Yep.
to do, right? So I feel like that system is interesting because it gives you options, and I feel like this is what a lot of fighting games right now are missing. If you want to go back to the developer side of things, is that you don't really have options in some cases. It's like I mean I like bringing up the Street Fighter 4 example often because in a lot of situations it's like you have to do this combo, and if you don't do it, there's no other option. Like you do the one frame link or the two frame link or whatever, right? Like the difficult part of the combo, and if you fail at that, you just don't get anything. And that's a big a big jump, for someone that is trying to get to that intermediate level, right? Like we're talking about people that are trying to progressively improve, and this progression is broken up by this huge gap basically that they have to overcome. So that's also
Well,
really important, I think,
I
on
will.
developer side.
Okay, I will say that. I will say this. I feel like part of it is talking about, oh, there's only you have to do the optimal combo with Street Fighter 4, and you're right. Like in most cases, you have to. But I think that's also every fighting game. We always end up at the end of the day going for the most optimal combo or the
Hmm.
most optimal set play situation or the most we aim to be the most optimal in fighting games because that gives us the guaranteed situation that we need, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you really think about it, when you have games where you have the one frame link combo and then you have the regular combo, right? That's rewarding some form of execution or some form of difficulty, right? And I understand that, like, it shouldn't be up to that point where we force these players to have to learn this one way. But at the same time, don't you think it's always going to be like that with
Well, no.
fighting games regardless? Like it's
What I'm
going
trying to
you
say is that you should have options in the sense that, say, I have this combo starter, right? And then I
yeah.
have imagine the game as links, right? Like Street Fighter 4 links. So I do this combo starter, and then I have, I don't know, three options. One is I cancel
Mhm.
straight into the special. That's really basic, right? Then I
Yes.
have another option that is like, I don't know, a 4 frame link. So it's relatively easy, but it still requires some practice. And then
Yes.
you have the really R option, which is doing the 1 frame
Only
link,
one
right?
frame link, yeah.
Yeah, and the differential between these is not too big, right? Like it's not to the point where like the difference is huge. Because that's what I was referring to. Like in some cases in Street
That's
Fighter
me.
4,
It's
you
huge.
just
Yeah,
do
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
move, and if you don't do the 1 frame link, you go from 100 damage to 400 damage, right? Like that's the difference of
Yeah,
damage
yeah,
that
yeah,
we're
yeah.
talking about. So like
You're
that's the kind
absolutely
of
right.
execution that I feel is very daunting and
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah, yeah.
easily be worked around on. So like that's what I was saying with the progressive combos with Marvel and stuff, because you give people options to learn because they want to do the cool stuff, but the cool stuff is hard and it requires a lot of practice and it's boring. But at the same time, as they're practicing the hard stuff, they're practicing the
They already
basic
have the
things
easy
too.
stuff down. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. So I mean, that's another way I feel like of
I see what
getting
you're saying,
people
yeah.
into, like trying to learn the game basically in a way that is not necessarily like just grinding the same combo for hours on end, or at least, like the same link
Right.
specifically in this case. So, I mean, that's another way of approaching the situation, I guess. And
I
this
I also
leads. Oh, go ahead.
I also think, even though we've talked a lot about on the dev side, there's also the player side mirror. There's also,
Mm-hmm.
how exactly, if this player wants to get into it, what kind of player are they? Are they gonna be even conductive of learning? Are they capable of
Oh, we're getting
learning?
to the good stuff.
Yeah, we're getting
Can I
to good
chime in
stuff.
here?
Go, go
Yeah,
ahead.
like are they gonna be even like, receptive to the idea of wanting to learn in the first place? Like we're not talking about the newer players that are just coming in alone. This could even be someone who's aiming for the intermediate level, right? Like it it's up to whether or not they are willing to want to learn. And I get it, like you play any sport really, not even just fighting games. You play any sport to win the game, right? But
Mhm.
you have to again find the humility within yourself to be like, well, I've got to also learn how to do this particular thing. And most sometimes I have people that just don't want to learn. That just straight up just don't even want to, like, even if you show it to them, hey, you should do this one because it's a little bit more optimal. You should do this combo or you should do this set play because it will always guarantee the situation every time, right? And this allows you to form a mix up on your opponent or be able to put them in a situation where it's in your favor, right? And then they don't want to do it. They try to give some, excuse for the side of it, and then it's so hard to get them to be like, well, look, this is the one thing that's got to be done here, right? I know you may want to do something else, and that's great, and I think that goes with what you're talking about, Mir, in terms of also like being able to practice the easy stuff with the hard stuff at the same time, and
Yeah.
having the ability to be like, well, I can also try to do my own thing as well, which is towards expressiveness with accessibility. But ultimately, right, as I said before, it's gonna come down to doing the thing that's the most optimal when it comes to competitive play. That's where it boils down to the most. You have to do the most optimal thing, regardless of what game, regardless of whatever fighting game. That's what it's going to go down to. And
Hmm.
most people, they kind of have this little conflict on the side of it, right? I know I don't know if Vesper has any examples either, but that's that's the rough of it too
I'm
when
sure
trying
he
to
has
teach
many.
somebody.
I have many, but I don't really need to mention them. I'm sure people understand and get the idea. Like this is the thing, the game can't, developers cannot provide a psychiatrist class in the game. Okay, they can't supply us a yoga instructor to begin your matches with. All right, we can't control the fact whether people want to learn or not. The most important factor is to make sure that the information is there for the people that do want to learn, right?
Yep.
That is important. So the people that do want to put in the work and that do want to learn, those people aren't left in the dust because it's not something that is a majority of the players want to do, right? And once
Mhm.
again, that's where the landing page comes in. Now, now part of the problem about getting people to learn whatever, I mean, as long as they hit the points, developers hit the points that we mentioned in this video on ways to do that to get people to learn naturally and to have fun at a constant progressive rate, then the players can be introduced at a good speed so that everything comes naturally, right? And then it is fun because they've already reached that part where they're getting close to that intermediate level.
Mhm.
Now, in terms of players, like the accessibility and stuff and all that, I mean, there's nothing that's going to help a player get good automatically without putting in
Ultimately.
work. I mean, I've
Ul-
had so much experience with this, just playing fantasy strike, man. I mean, you can see my videos up on YouTube. They're hilarious, by the way. You guys need to check them out if you haven't seen them. But we're talking about a game that is very, very accessible. There's not even a crouch or crouching attacks, right? And we're talking like one button specials. I mean, throw tech is pressing nothing. Okay, it's as basic as it gets. But I'm not kidding you. I've never had more rage quits in that game than I do in Street Fighter Five in a single night. I've gotten like 6, 7 rage quits in a row playing Rook. He's a grappling character, and it doesn't
Yo,
matter
bro,
if you have one button specials. It's not the fundamentals of a fighting game do not change. If there is a zoner in a game and they have a DP, I'm going to zone you, bro. And if there's
yo,
a
that's a
grappler,
fact.
if there's a
Mhm.
grapple in the game, I'm gonna keep mixing you up until you die. It doesn't change. Just
It
because you have to press one button, it doesn't change. I'm going to exploit the fighting game, nuances that I've learned,
It's up to you
whether
to
there's an
back that.
execution barrier or not,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of course, of course. I
And
mean,
yeah,
there's
that's the thing. And like I said, it's I really don't want to. I don't. We're not trying to brainwash people to say you do want to learn, you will have fun. Like that's silly. That's not going to happen.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
That's
Yeah,
not going to happen, man. So the
yeah,
best thing we could do is just we raise the floor on the social aspect and the fun of it to show people that it is fun to learn and to make it fun to learn too, not just saying it but doing it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
I
You
mean,
feel me?
another thing about this is that, like you mentioned, not only is it people not wanting to learn, but it's more like the insincerity, I think, of the entirety of the concept of people wanting to learn, in the sense that someone will come to you and say, you should really teach me this game because I know that you're good at this game. So what's the secret? And you're like, well, there's really no secret to it, right? It's a multitude of things that you have to practice, and you have to do, like you have to practice your combos, and then you have to learn what the spacing is, and you have to learn what your special moves are, and how they interact with your opponent, blah blah blah. And you just list basically the entirety of the fighting game to them, and then they kind of look at you as if they were expecting you to have just found
Pandora's
that
box.
epiphany, yeah, the nirvana. It's like they expect you to know that secret that will let them be good,
Yeah.
but that's not how games work. That's not how
Right.
anything works, honestly, and like even in real life. It's
Yeah.
down to actually putting in the time, and like I said before, I don't think it can always be fun. You have to accept the fact that sometimes you won't have fun, but if you want to improve, it's important that you go through it, and it's a process that is gradual. That's another thing
Yeah,
that a lot of people don't want to accept. They
I
expect
agree
to
with that.
be, complete scrubs one day, and then the day after, the ultra grandmaster, best player in the world. That's not how it works. Because
Or it could be the opposite too, Mir. It's not just that. You can go the other way around too, where I've
Mhm.
seen players go, well, I play Vega. and Vega can't win a major, so I can't improve. So Vega just
I don't think
sucks.
I'll ever be. I don't think I'll ever
Yeah.
be good. I've
I
had
can't be good because the character sucks, or this is a
I've,
bad matchup, so there's no
Yeah.
point even learning it.
uh,
You just lose.
So
yep.
finding excuses, basically.
Right, and it's the absolute opposite. So it's like there's so many different angles you can go, and
I
like
think,
I
and I
said, people are using the information as misinformation, right? To have an excuse.
yep.
So that's an issue as well. So yeah, I mean, there's gonna be no I got ripped on Psycho Power in 2 weeks kind of shit in Street Fighter. It's not gonna
I,
happen, right?
and I think the biggest thing, I guess, the factor for me at least, and I think maybe a lot of people, is that you have to find the motivation to play, right? You have to find the actual motivation. It's ultimately like I'm gonna be cheesy with the whole Daigo book or whatever. It's called the will to
No,
win, right?
bro, don't do it.
The
Don't do
will
it.
to the will to keep winning, all right? Like,
Oh
but
no.
it's not about winning. It's about the will, right? It's about
Oh,
the motive. It's honestly about the motivation to actually like play. Like, why do you play? If you want, like, if we're talking about having fun with learning and having fun with fighting games and that learning process to the intermediate level with competitiveness, right? What is the motivation for you to want to play, right? Why do you want to play at this competitive level? And I believe Mir mentioned some things. You might want to play for money, or you might want to play for fame, or you might want to play for the glory of being the strongest, right? Like
Mhm.
what is gonna bring you to motivate you to do these things that some people may deem as boring, right? Because I'm weird. I'm sorry, I'm super weird. So me personally, I enjoy looking at replays, but other people don't. So
I mean, the reason I play Sonic is really weird. I play because it's fun. It's fucked up, but that's
Who would even
it's
say that
true.
such something so daring
I know, right? I
on a
know it's
YouTube
it's
video?
weird. I mean, I'm sorry I had to lay it out like that, but it's crazy
well,
thought. I know.
well, why is it fun for you? Why
I don't know.
exactly?
I find it hilarious when like
When people
I don't
rage
know,
quit on
man.
you.
Yeah, when people rage quit on me.
No, but like that's a good point. Like for example, for me, in a lot of games, especially I can think of other genres too that I like to play, like shooter games, FPS. One of the satisfaction of seeing that I've improved, that say my scores went up or I've gotten more wins or whatever. That
Mhm.
is what gets me going. Like that is what I like. That's where the fun comes in, is that I can see that there's progress. For me, that's what
Yep.
it is. Like, that's why I enjoy some games like that really how can I say, they're based on the trial and error kind of thing. The Dark Souls series is a great example. The
Oh,
games
of
are
course.
known for being very difficult, but I don't think that is the point. The games are a test of your ability to learn, which is what I
Yep.
really enjoy. It's that
Praise the
the
sun.
the, the game the game is about like doing the same thing over and over until you learn. So I just enjoy those kind of things. I just enjoy the learning experience. So there's all kinds of different people, right, in the world, and I'm not expecting everyone to be the same, because that'd be just mental. But the the ability of you as a player to help other people learn is there, I think. And if the developers can do something about it too, would be really nice, and it would help those that don't have a friend. They can tell them what to do, right?
Yep.
Right, exactly.
Um,
Like a developer side has to help a lot more. Like it has to be easy for people to find their local scene. It has to
Yep.
be easy for people. It has to be a fun online experience where there's no lag, right?
mhm.
Roll back
It
over.
has to be, everything. Like it has to be fun to if you want the information to learn, it has to be there. And it goes on and on and on. Where like the game experience has to be good because if the people run into these hurdles where the game is super imbalanced or they don't know when a tournament is coming up all
Yeah.
these things, then it's gonna have a negative
and
outlook on
and I
overall.
and I can give perfect examples, right? Like first and foremost, Samurai Showdown is one thing, right? I wanted to get back into Samurai Showdown because Itoha came out, and I was very hyped for that character. But
I
the
see.
on the but but the online experience is so bad, and that's one of the main things I feel for a lot of individuals going into fighting games as well. If the online is bad and they can't find a match, or it's super inconsistent and unstable online because of the delay based netcode or some poorly implemented rollback like early years of Street Fighter 5. I remember those days. So like yesterday. Wow. Those games, those type of experiences sour players coming into the game, period, right? You have to make sure that your game at least has like good online connectivity from jump, because then I get people coming in my chat saying, man, the online ain't very great for this game. You think this game is dead? Right? Like, and then it's like you see other people streaming and then you realize they can't find any games and you're like, man, this game might be donezo. It's just that to me is a factor of it, right? It's a huge factor, is the online quality in general of the game, making sure that that's good. The other things we talked about too were, casual modes for replayability, and maybe including that to have aspects of teaching people how to play the game. That's another factor that we talked about. And those things in general are important. They're just important, period.
Hmm. I feel like this is
Uh,
Oh, sorry. You were about to say something?
Another thing on the motivation side too is the whole aspect of competition. Really, is how people switch games based on what's at Evo, for instance, right? Like that's
Hmm.
another thing I want to talk about too, with in terms of the motivation aspect, right? I noticed so many people are starting to be interested in all the games like now that were announced for the online Evo event, right?
Yeah.
Like all of the like before, I didn't see that many people were playing Killer Instinct. I'm not saying no one was playing Killer Instinct, but an influx of people came in because they heard it's going to be at Evo now. So now all these new players, Mr. Hentai Lover 69 is now in playing Killer Instinct, or
Hmm.
like,
Yo,
you
you
know,
know Hentai Lover too, bro?
it's crazy, right? Like you got
Such
you
a
got
small
players like,
world.
Yeah.
I hope you're not serious, Vesper.
I'm a training partner, man. What the fuck?
Yo, word.
Well, okay.
Yo.
So, I mean, just to say something about this, right? Like on my personal side of things, we even I, like for Killer Instinct, for example, I try to at least understand how the game is, because I've always seen it, being played, but I never really tried it for myself. So this, like the fact that there's, like you said, so many people now are trying it out, is a perfect opportunity to get started, because you have so many other
Exactly.
people that are around your level, because they never played the game, right? They are trying to
Exactly.
learn. So you can have so many people that can help you get that social aspect of the playing the game, which is exactly what we begged about for, like, I don't know how many minutes we've been talking, because it's you got a friend that can help you and you can help them, and it's great. Like you're learning together. But
And the
getting
fact,
into a game that it's like you don't know how many people are playing, and maybe the last update was like 2 years ago, and you're the only one that's interested in it.
yep.
And then you go online and there's just people that have been playing this game since the 1920s, and like they can just rip you a new in a matter of seconds. There's such a big difference, right? So like
Yeah.
catch these opportunities while you can, I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
And it's even more motivation when the fighting game community is making these events, so that way these games get bolstered up, so that way we can actually get new people coming in and playing as well,
Hmm.
right? The all of this facilitates the environment for newer players to actually come in and get stronger. I'm now considering thinking about trying out Skullgirls. The more and more I see Sonic Fox play it now, because I'm like, yo, I want to actually try it out again. Like
Hmm.
things like that is just so important in revitalizing games, and getting new players to come back into old titles as well. And that's also why I think devs really need to count their blessings with these community events. But that again is for another topic.
I mean, I still think this is like a good moment to basically end this discussion, because we've touched on a variety of topics, and I feel like we made some pretty important points. I guess to summarize, we could say that, well, the developers could do more to make games more interesting to learn and more fun for those that might be interested. So that's one point. Another one is that you, as a player, if you know other people that need help, you can help them in a way that is conducive to learning, but at the same time is fun because of the social
Hmm.
aspect. And the third thing is that people, regardless of how much you try, there's people that just don't want to learn.
Yep.
And you have to accept that. Like, there's just no saving those kind of people. And I guess the last one is that, like this social aspect, especially as we mentioned just now with you, with the tournaments and stuff. It's really important to revitalize gaming, get a community going, because and it goes back to the original point of having a landing page that the developers can put there, talk about the community, like what is happening right now in the life of this
Exactly.
fighting game, because the
Exactly.
social aspect is just the root of the entire premise of the fighting game, right? It's a competitive game, so you need someone to play against, right? You're not playing
Right.
against the ball all
Name
the
of the
time.
game.
Yeah,
The name of the game.
And like I
exactly.
said, we can't just put it all on the dev's shoulders. Like, we're gonna try to do our part too to help teach new players as well when the next
Mhm.
big fighting game comes out.
You
And we'll
already
do
know.
our best to try to put it into a understandable, digestible format, because that's what's something that we're trying to learn over the years as we get more experience doing it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because we're all teachers here. So
I mean, any other parting thoughts?
Well,
no, I think we nailed it.
I think we nailed it too. I do want to say, like, again, at the end of the day, there's got to be a way, and I think the social aspect is a very good way of teaching fighting game fundamentals. I think that's the biggest thing, because as Vesper was saying before, it doesn't matter how simple the game is, you can't get around learning the fundamentals of a fighting game, because that carries you through every fighting game in the genre, regardless. So I think the social aspect is incredibly important when trying to help people learn fighting game fundamentals.
Okay. Well, I guess we can close it out here, guys. And I have my last parting thought. I guess it's a collection of thoughts. One is
Yeah.
blame yourself, not the opponent. The second one is watch your goddamn replay. The third one is don't be discouraged by the fact that you think you're not learning, because you probably are. You just cannot see it. So, like, just keep going. And
Yep.
with that, I would just, right here, thank you for joining me on this learning journey or learning discussion. And I guess we'll see you all next time.
All right, see you later, guys.
Peace out.